So Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard this morning for nearly $70 billion, or at least began the process of doing so that will complete sometime in the near fiscal year. It's not unfair to say that this is a power play, a power grab in an industry where Microsoft's chief competitors in gaming, Sony and Nintendo, can't spend on this level, and their competition in terms of market cap, Apple, Google, and Amazon mostly, have barely dipped their toes into the space at all, and have experienced pretty substantial difficulty getting even that far. In terms of Xbox, it's obviously a win, but in my humble opinion, the purchase doubles down on what Xbox already was in terms of a brand rather than expanding it to, shall we say, a more diversified audience. Xbox used to have Halo as an exclusive, now it has Halo and Call of Duty, which is cool, I guess. Pretty much been what the vibe was going on this whole time anyways, but cool. I fully expect the persistent value of just the legacy games in the major franchises acquired, Diablo, Overwatch, Call of Duty, Candy Crush, Warcraft, and Starcraft specifically, will justify the value of the purchase. Overwatch still prints money. Warzone prints money. And there's a new Modern Warfare game coming this year, and there will probably be some new version of Warzone the year after that. Starcraft 2 is still a popular esport, and there is an abundance of reasons to think that appropriate value for this purchase and acquisition is already here. But my chief concern about this is the games a little further out. Overwatch 2, Diablo 4, and whatever StarCraft or Warcraft sequel may or may not exist at all have been hit very hard by recent scandals, lawsuits, and turnover at Blizzard. These games still exist. They are still coming out. They might even be exclusives. But I think that it's fair to wonder after all this time and all this change behind the scenes exactly what state and shape these titles are actually in. Overwatch 2 was announced as a PvE primary experience, essentially a full game single-player expansion of the original Overwatch PvP multiplayer. Then Jeff Kaplan left, and the project was refocused to more of a proper sequel/update to the original game. But I think I speak for the community at large when I say we don't entirely understand exactly what Overwatch 2 is supposed to be anymore. It purports to be a sequel to the multiplayer experience while also existing alongside of it, and there's still PvE content, but we think also maybe not. And point is, there's a fair amount of ambiguity here that we as fans can't really fathom just yet. I assume if Microsoft has been on the inside and actually taken a look at this project, they must have some kind of faith to invest in it, as it's the next big game to drop from the studio in any kind of reasonable time frame, but label me as skeptical. The same goes for Diablo 4, which has been rebooted and retooled several times itself. Perhaps most damning in terms of future hopes for Diablo is that much of the optimism around the game for a long time was based on some of the developer quotes early on. There was a clear direction for the game, and specifically some faith in the now departed Luis Barriga. While not as high profile as some of the other departures, it's evident that the leadership and the principal architects of whatever direction Diablo 4 was moving in its most recent incarnation, those people have left the company. That isn't to say that the game is in a bad shape or there aren't still incredible people working on it. It's purely an acknowledgement that there have been course corrections already and so far, and sailing has not been entirely smooth. So Overwatch 2 is in flux, Diablo 4 is in flux, the other legacy brands under Blizzard, Warcraft and Starcraft, have challenges of their own. Warcraft is a franchise all but exclusively driven by World of Warcraft at this point, long after the faceplant that was Warcraft 3 Reforged, and WoW, while still popular and a cash cow, is not the force it was in the scene once upon a time, and it's seen some growing pains of its own, be it loss of subscribers or mixed receptions to expansions, all of which is beside the fact that its own greatest competitor is literally just a younger version of itself in WoW Classic, which has challenges all its own. Okay, and I guess Final Fantasy XIV is also a big deal. And here's the thing. The IPs are valuable. The franchise names and the legacy content, and by that I mean the older games in the series, all have serious value. But what's ultimately going to matter most of all is the future that these franchises have. And to be honest, I'm a little skeptical. I've spent the past nearly 3 months now playing Halo Infinite and seeing the reaction to the game change over time, witnessing the game's reputation seem to buckle under the weight of expectations from past entries, even if it has no bearing on the current incarnation of either Infinite or its developer 343. How are gamers going to react to Warcraft 4 if it doesn't have the same kind of multiplayer tools as 3 or as Frozen Throne? How are people going to receive Overwatch 2 if it's just a PvP expansion, or on the flip side, just a PvE expansion? Diablo 4 has been rebooted already more than once, and what shape is it even in anymore? Does Blizzard still have the respect and the clout within the industry and amongst its fans?
I was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
No, it's a fully fledged Diablo experience.
Even unified with the Xbox brand to weather any more flops? Who's even still around to develop a potential Warcraft 4 or Starcraft 3? And if WoW goes tits up, what do you do with the IP? Is World of Warcraft 2 even possible anymore, given how much of a sunk investment it was for Blizzard on the first go? Because even with all of Microsoft's money, they haven't been all that successful at coming out with MMOs either. I don't have any answers, and I suspect Microsoft only has some of them. The advantage to being a massive corporate juggernaut like Microsoft, factors larger than your competitors in terms of market cap, is you can afford to take risks like this, knowing even if only half the invested IPs continue to be lucrative, it's still a good deal. And I hope it means from a culture and worker treatment standpoint that things improve at Activision and it winds up being good for the health of the industry, the developers, and for the games themselves. But I don't know anything for certain in those terms, and it feels like just another variant thrown into a sea of variances and variables acquired in the industry over the last decade, from abusive workplaces, predatory business practices, record profits, supply chain issues, and now a pandemic spanning 3 years. I believe this will be good for Xbox as a brand, good for Microsoft as a business entity, heck, maybe even good for gaming as a whole in some small ways. But the ripples from this across the industry, at least at this juncture, are unpredictable. I spent this morning speculating with some friends about what comes next in the scope of this acquisition. It makes me think that Microsoft is thinking bigger than I had originally anticipated. Could Microsoft acquire Valve and roll Steam and the Steam Deck into the Xbox brand? They've been trying to make the Xbox and Microsoft storefronts a thing for a while, and Steam would give them a much larger slice of that distributor/retailer pie, and mobile hardware with the Steam Deck launch imminent. Could they buy Rockstar and make GTA 6 Xbox exclusive? Could they partner with Nintendo to provide cloud solutions just like Sony is currently doing for their games and put Game Pass on Switch? Could Microsoft just buy Nintendo and worry about antitrust laws later? What today's news really does is accelerates the competition in a big way. Today is January 18th, 2021, and literally just yesterday, the prominent news across the gamer sphere was that Sony was gearing up to show off and eventually launch a Game Pass competitor. I honestly wonder how viable such a service would even be without Activision titles, relying solely on Sony's first-party single-player games as the primary selling point. So we're at a critical juncture. There's been a lot of change this morning. There's going to be a lot more change this week and going forward as this whole thing gets finalized, and we get to see the roots of some of the decisions that are impacted by this acquisition take hold, in terms of games being exclusive, in terms of developers shifting around, and in terms of the future plans for a lot of the new developers that Microsoft has acquired. It's an exciting time and an uncertain future.